All right, folks, I'm told it's all systems go, so we'll see what happens here. Excuse me. As required under the Planning Act, a public meeting is being held prior to the committee making a decision on these applications. And I'll start out by introducing our Committee of Adjustment. I'm Mr. Robertson. We've got Ms. Richardson. We've got Ms. Archer. We've got Mr. Erickson. We've got Mr. Strangway. And a new member of our team is Mr. Finn. All right. And staff, and I read this now because anyone that tries to memorize this, well, good luck. Anyway, we've got Ms. Berry, the Director of Development Services. We've got Mr. Connolly, Manager of Planning. And we've got Mr. Shahid and Ms. Evans, they're Planner 2s. We've got Mr. LaHaye, Secretary Treasurer, and Ms. Crockford, Recording Secretary, and Mr. McKinnon, the Plans Examiner, Building and Septic Division. I hope I didn't miss anyone. And now, Mr. Finn, I'm going to come back and ask you maybe if you could give us a short version of why you're here.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. As indicated, my name is Eric Finn. I'm a retired civil litigation lawyer living here in Lindsay. Lived here for about 6.5 years. Prior to that, I was in Barrie for 15 years, practicing with for Barrie, a large firm there, doing a lot of municipal work on the litigation side. And then prior to that, I was living in Toronto, where I worked for Ontario Hydro at the time for 20 years, again doing civil litigation work. I was the Assistant General Counsel in charge of litigation, and got involved in a lot of expropriation work, of course, being involved with Ontario Hydro. So that's a little bit of my professional background. I'm married, 4 kids that are all grown up and gone with grandkids. And I'm here to see my grandkids. That's why I moved to Lindsay. So it's good to be here. I hope I can add something to the Committee of Adjustments work. Thanks very much.
And thank you. You're very welcome. And given the goings on in today's world, it's not bad to have a lawyer on side. Are there any comments or questions with respect to the agenda before I ask for a motion? Being none, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as printed? Mr. Strangway, Ms. Archer? No further comments or questions? All those in favor? And that carries. We don't have anyone online today committee-wise, so we're okay with the show of hands, I think, as far as our voting is concerned. All right. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? All right. Minutes. Now, as you know, or we all know, the minutes were online with respect to the reading of them. So are there any comments or questions with respect to the online minutes before I ask for a motion? All right. Being none, can I get a motion then to adopt the minutes as printed? Ms. Archer? Mr. Erickson? No further comments or questions? All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you so much. All right. For the information of everyone that's here and everyone that we have online, and we do have folks online, I believe, that are going to be responding to some of these applications as we move along. So the committee will hear comments, gather information, and may ask questions to clarify statements made. The committee may ask and answer questions or redirect questions to the appropriate person. Please note that any information or comments given to the committee during this meeting, they are considered evidence. We will first hear from staff, then the applicant or his or her agent. We will then hear from any person in support of or from those who have questions, concerns, or are opposed to the application. And finally, the applicant or his or her agent will have an opportunity to respond to any of the statements made to the committee. Now, I would advise that if you wish to speak, please raise your hand. And for those online, I'm sure your picture will appear on the screen. For those here and those online, if you wish to speak, and I'll ask those to approach, the folks here to approach the podium, there is a button there that says speak, and there will be a red light come on. and I would ask you to speak clearly into that mic. And for those online, when your picture appears, I would appreciate it if you'd give us your name, and then we'll proceed from there. We do afford you 10 minutes to make your presentation. However, I don't think anyone has ever gone that far along. But if you find that you can't possibly get all of your information in within those 10 minutes, then I will ask the committee if they will afford you a couple of more minutes to finish off your presentation. So just so everyone's aware of that. All right, moving right along. We're dealing with deferred applications, and this is file number D20-2024-023, and this is 60 Elder Street, Geographic Township of Fenelon. Ms. Evans, please go ahead.
Thank you. The subject property is designated waterfront under the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan and is zoned rural residential type 3 zone under the Township of Fenelon zoning bylaw 12-95. The property is near the southern shore of Sturgeon Lake and contains a single detached dwelling constructed in 1958 and a privy. The purpose of the application is to recognize an addition that was constructed onto the rear of the dwelling, as well as a deck on the front of the dwelling. Relief is needed from the following sections of the zoning bylaw, being section 13.2.1.3a of the zoning bylaw, which requires a minimum front yard setback of 7.5 meters. The existing setback of 6.8 meters to the attached deck is to remain. Section 13.2.1.3d of the zoning bylaw requires a minimum rear yard setback of 7.5 meters. The existing setback of 1.2 meters is to remain. The addition, which is the two-story portion of the dwelling seen here on the right side of the elevation, contains a kitchen and 2 bedrooms and provides additional living space. It can be expected that over time, owners may improve their property in an attempt to achieve its highest and best use. This photo shows the original portion of the dwelling at the front, which is the darker burgundy color, and then the newer portion, which is the lighter reddish pink. Within the official plan's waterfront designation, low-density residential uses and buildings and structures accessory to residential uses are permitted. The proposal complies with all provisions of the zoning bylaw, with the exception of the minimum front yard setback and minimum rear yard setback. The deck, which requires relief, can be seen in the photo on the left. Due to the elevation change between the deck and dwelling and the road allowance, it is not anticipated that the reduced front yard setback of the deck will impact traffic flow, maintenance, or sightlines. Additionally, there appear to be existing dwellings with reduced front yard setbacks on other properties along Elder Street, and as such, the setback of the deck is not out of character with the existing built form. The photo on the left shows the rear of the dwelling, and the air photo on the right has the neighboring property to the south outlined in blue and the subject property identified with the star. The property that abuts the rear lot line of the subject property is approximately 33.8 hectares in size and is currently vacant. The area directly behind the subject property is a mature wooded area. As such, land use, privacy, and massing issues are not anticipated to result from the reduced rear yard setback. And while this configuration results in limited amenity space in the rear yard, the subject property has sufficient amenity space in the side yards. Comments were received from the supervisor of Part 8 sewage systems requesting that a condition be placed on the endorsement of the minor variance to satisfy the supervisor, and this condition has been included. No other comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies, and no comments were received from members of the public. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Are there any questions of the planner? Mr. Erickson, go ahead.
Not the planner, but just in the conditions. Now where do I see? Okay, it's condition 2, line 2. It's just a typo where it says are applied for. The word should be and, A-N-D. That's all.
Thank you for that. Are there any further comments or questions at the planner? All right, being none. Is the applicant here? Does the applicant wish to speak to this application? All right, would appear not. Committee, where are we? Mr. Strangway?
As recommended by staff, thanks.
All right, and do I have a seconder? Ms. Richardson. Are there any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? Being none, all those in favor? And that, oh, I guess before I get too far ahead of myself here, let's do this. So just strike that for a minute. Is there anyone online wishing to speak in support of this application or here to speak in support of the application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? All right, being none, now we'll get back to our vote. All right, those in favor? And that carries, thank you. All right, we're moving on to new applications. And this is file number D20-2024-031, 2173 Pigeon Lake Road, Geographic Township of Emily. And I believe, Mr. Shahid, this is a revised edition?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, could you clarify what you just said?
No. This is new from the one that we received.
Correct.
So revised? Yeah,
Correct.
All right, that being said, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This property currently contains a one-story dwelling, detached garage, pergola, and a shed. The dwelling is currently 166.5 square meters with 33.8 square meters dedicated to a home occupation. The subject application seeks to facilitate an addition onto the existing dwelling to enlarge the existing permitted home occupation. Relief is required as the zoning bylaw restricts the size of home occupations to 25% of the gross floor area of the dwelling or a maximum of 45 square meters. In this case, it is 45 square meters. That's the maximum, as it is the lesser amount. The application looks to increase the dwelling to 200.3 square meters with 67.62 square meters dedicated to the home occupation. The home occupation will take up around a third of the gross floor area of the dwelling. The home occupation currently serves as a bakery, and the application will continue this use. The intention of the addition is to provide extra storage space and provide a protected area for their products. The home occupation operates only 2 days out of the week, and the addition is not expected to intensify or bring in any additional traffic. If you refer to the left image on the slide, that is how the property currently is viewed from the road. The view will remain unchanged, as the addition will be to the rear of the dwelling into the rear yard. Concerns regarding any potential changes to views, privacy, or overcrowding is avoided as there are no directly abutting dwellings to the subject property. The surrounding lands are agricultural lands with residences located distantly from the subject property. The image shown on the slide is from the rear yard where the addition will take place. In this image, you can also see the neighboring property with no structures directly apparent. For comments after the writing of the report, the supervisor, Part 8, sewage systems from the Building and Septic Division commented that a site inspection was conducted to evaluate the current sewage system for the proposed application. As per the Ontario Building Code, it was found that the increase in total daily sewage would be seen with the proposed addition. So with the limited information available, it was determined that a sewage system upgrade would be required to accommodate the proposal. As such, a condition is requested to be placed on the endorsement of the minor variance to satisfy the supervisor of Part 8 sewage systems. A copy of the revised conditions has been provided to committee members. In conclusion, based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions of the planner? All right, being none, is the applicant here? Does the applicant, yes, Mr. DeBoer? Would you state your name for us, sir?
Good afternoon, it's Tom DeBoer at TD Consulting. Just here in case there's additional questions. As it relates to the late coming information from the Part 8 sewage supervisor, we have been working with Ann directly over Friday and Tuesday of this past week. We have come to a solution and we're very confident that the conditions will be met.
All right, thank you for that. Are there any questions of Mr. DeBoer? All right, thank you again, sir. Much appreciated. All right. Is there anyone online wishing to speak in support of this application or here? Anyone wishing to speak in support of this application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? All right. Being none, committee, and I assume we're going to, well, the motion will read as amended. All right, Ms. Richardson, Ms. Archer, any further comments or questions on the motion on the floor? All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. All right. All right, we're now dealing with file number D20-2024-032, and this is 7 Cops Cove, Geographic Township of Verlem, and we have Ms. Evans again. Go ahead.
Thank you. The subject property is designated waterfront under the City of Kawartha Lake's official plan and is zoned residential type 1 zone under the Township of Verulem zoning bylaw 6-87. The subject property is located on the western shore of Pigeon Lake and is a waterfront lot. It currently contains a 1-story single detached dwelling constructed in 1959, a detached garage, and a shed which is to be removed as per Condition 3 and Appendix E of the report. The surrounding area is comprised primarily of residential and agricultural uses. The proposal is to demolish the existing dwelling and construct a new 1-story dwelling with an attached waterside deck and screened porch. Relief is required from Section 8.2F of the zoning bylaw, which requires a minimum interior side yard setback of 3 meters on one side and 1.8 meters on the other side. The proposed setbacks are 1.3 meters from the north lot line and 3 meters from the south lot line. Section 8.2J of the zoning bylaw permits a maximum lot coverage of 33%. The proposed lot coverage is 34%. These elevations give an idea of what the proposed dwelling is to look like, and it will be larger than the existing dwelling and will provide enhanced outdoor amenity space with the proposed deck and screened porch. And as per Appendix E, the shed that is currently on the property is to be removed, and we have a photo of that shed here. The photo on the left shows the front of the existing dwelling, and the photo on the right shows the back. Looking to the official plan, low-density residential uses are permitted within the waterfront designation. And looking to the zoning bylaw, the proposal complies with all provisions of the zoning bylaw with the exception of the minimum interior side yard setback and maximum lot coverage. The existing dwelling has an interior side yard setback of 1.1 meters, so the new dwelling will improve upon that setback, and the wall of the new dwelling will be approximately in line with where the existing dwelling bumps out at the side there, as identified by that yellow rectangle. These photos show the interior side yard setback where the proposed reduced setback is to be. As the proposed dwelling is 1 story, the overall massing of the dwelling will not significantly change beyond what exists today, and impacts to privacy between neighboring lots is not anticipated. Adequate amenity space will remain to access between yards, as well as for drainage and building maintenance. For comparative purposes, the typical minimum interior side yard setback for a 1-story dwelling under most of the city's other rural zoning bylaws is 3 meters on one side and 1.3 meters on the other side. The proposed lot coverage, including the proposed dwelling with its attached deck and screened porch, and the existing detached garage, exceeds what is permitted by 1%. Adequate outdoor amenity space is to be maintained, and the proposed increased lot coverage is not anticipated to have an impact on drainage. No comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies, and no comments were received from members of the public. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Questions of the planner? Yes, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Strangway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Through you to Catherine. What's the reason we're asking the shed be removed? Is that something the owner is volunteering to do or something we're asking for?
Thank you. Through the chair, the proposal was always to remove the shed, so instead of including it in the calculation of lot coverage, there's a condition placed to have it removed as it wasn't included in that calculation. Had they wanted to keep the shed, though, I would have included it in the lot coverage, and there wouldn't be a condition to remove it.
Thank you.
Anything further on the planner? All right, being none. Mr. DeBoer, is this you again? Yep.
Good afternoon again. It's Tom DeBoer with TD Consulting. As it relates to the shed, it was always the expectation of the owner to remove that shed, so there's no consequence, there's no negotiation, it was just part of the process. The expansion of the dwelling and the rest of the development of the property is going to give them the space that they require, so the shed became redundant, and as part of the communication that we said, let's remove it so there's no issue there. If there's any other questions related to any parts or processes, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Well, let's see if there are. Are there any questions of Mr. DeBoer? Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate that. All right. Is there anyone online or here wishing to speak in support of this application, in support of the application? Anyone here or online wishing to speak in opposition to this application, opposition to the application? Looks like it could be one of those days, committee. Where are we? Yeah, I'll jinx it. All right, I need a motion. Mr. Strangway.
As recommended by staff, thank you.
And seconded by Mr. Finn. All right. Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. All right, we're now dealing with file number D20-2024-033, and this is 68 Riverbank Road, Geographic Township of Somerville, and again, Ms. Evans.
Thank you. The subject property is designated environmental protection under the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan and is zoned limited service residential floodplain zone under the Township of Somerville zoning bylaw 78-45. While residential uses are not permitted within the environmental protection designation, as per policy 34.1, nothing in the official plan or the implementing zoning bylaw prevent the use of any land, building, or structure for a purpose prohibited by the official plan, if the land, building, or structure was lawfully used for that purpose on the date this plan was adopted by council. City may recognize the existing use of land in an implementing zoning bylaw. The property is zoned to permit residential uses as well as accessory structures, and the residential use has been established since at least 1966. The proposal complies with all provisions of the zoning bylaw with the exception of the maximum height for accessory structures, the maximum lot coverage for accessory structures, and the minimum water setback. The subject property is located on the western shore of the Burnt River and is a waterfront lot. The surrounding area is comprised primarily of residential uses and open space. Sorry about that, remote difficulties. The property currently contains a single detached dwelling constructed in 1966, 2 sheds, a detached garage currently under construction, and a carport seen in this photo, which is to be removed as per Condition 3 and Appendix E. The proposal is to recognize the detached garage that is under construction and the existing shed in the rear yard. Relief is required from the following provisions of the zoning bylaw, being section 18.1.3b, which permits a maximum height for accessory structures of 5 meters. The proposed height of the garage is 5.3 meters. Section 18.1.3a of the zoning bylaw permits a maximum lot coverage for accessory structures of 8% of the lot area, or a maximum of 225 square meters, whichever is less. The proposed lot coverage for accessory structures is 134 square meters, or 10% of the lot area. And section 5.2f of the zoning bylaw requires a minimum water setback of 15 meters. The existing setback of the shed is 4.8 meters. Here we have a photo of the garage under construction as well as the elevations. The original plans for the detached garage did comply with the maximum 5-meter height for accessory structures. However, at some point along the way, the plans were changed by the builder in order to increase the slope of the roof to help reduce the snow buildup on the roof. And this ended up changing the height of the garage, so it exceeded the maximum height by 0.3 meters. A detached garage is permitted in the front yard on a property that fronts on a navigable waterway, and the garage complies with the minimum front and side yard setbacks. As seen in these photos, the garage abuts a stand of mature trees, which provide a visual buffer between the garage and the neighboring property to the south. The garage is 1 story in height, and it is not anticipated that the 0.3 meter increase in height will be perceptible when viewing the property from the street, and the garage will not change the residential character of the property or the area. This photo shows the existing shed, which requires relief from the water setback. As per policy 3.11, the intent of the official plan is that development maintains a minimum setback of 15 meters from the shoreline. As the shed is used for storage purposes only, the location of the shed does not result in habitable space being located within the water setback, so it does not increase any risk associated with having habitable space within that setback, and its location is not anticipated to impact water quality or habitat. Additionally, due to the location of the dwelling, an accessory structure could not be located in the rear yard and maintain the minimum 15-meter water setback from the shoreline. The intent of establishing a maximum lot coverage for accessory structures is to maintain the residential character of the property and to ensure that accessory uses remain subordinate to the primary residential use. Just a note on the report, on page 5, in the first paragraph, I wrote that 10% of the lot area is equal to 117 square meters, but please note that this should read that 8% of the lot area is 117 square meters. So therefore, the resulting lot coverage of 134 square meters, which includes the detached garage and the 2 sheds that are on the property, it exceeds that 8% maximum by 17 square meters, resulting in the proposed lot coverage for accessory structures of 10%. It is not anticipated that this coverage will impact the residential character of the property, and the accessory structures are dispersed throughout the property, providing visual balance and ensuring the residential character of the property is maintained. No comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies, and no comments were received from members of the public. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions of the planner? Mr. Finn, go ahead.
Was any consideration given to removing the shed so as to reduce the overall coverage and to deal with the setback issue?
Through the chair, thank you for the question. So the original proposal was to remove the shed. Originally, the owners didn't know that they needed a minor variance for the garage. So the plan was to remove the shed. I believe they're going to sell it to their neighbor, so they wouldn't need a minor variance at all. But it turned out the garage needed a minor variance for its height, so they really did want to keep the shed originally, so it was included in the lot coverage, and its existing setback was recognized because their desire was to keep it in that location.
Anything further, Mr. Finn? All right. Ms. Archer, go ahead.
Through you, please, to the planner. I see that the dwelling was built in 1966. That shed looks fairly fresh. Did it have to have a building permit? Like, did we allow it to be built there, or was it built with no permit?
Through the chair, because of the size of the shed and the fact that it is a shed, it did not need a building permit.
Further questions of the planner? All right. Is the applicant here or online? Does the applicant wish to speak to the application? This is like an extremely agreeable day, isn't it? All right. Is there anyone online wishing to speak or here wishing to speak in support of this application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Opposition to the application? Being none. Committee. Ms. Richardson.
As recommended by staff.
All right. Do I have a seconder? Mr. Strangway. All right. Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? Being none, all those in favor? And that carries. We're now dealing with file number D20-2024-034, and this is 49 Meechin Drive, Geographic Township of Verlin. And Mr. Shahid, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property is situated on the southern shore of Sturgeon Lake. The neighborhood is primarily residential, comprised mainly of 1 to 2-story dwellings. Although the majority of the built form within the neighborhood was constructed during the 1900s, there are a few dwellings within the area constructed between the years 2017 to 2023. Just for reference, I've included photos of the existing structures on the slide. The property currently contains a 1-story frame dwelling with a rear deck, a cabin, and a detached garage in the front yard. The application seeks to remove the existing dwelling and detached garage in order to construct a new 2-story dwelling, new deck, new detached garage, and recognize the existing cabin. Relief is required from multiple provisions. The existing water setback, as shown on the slide, is 7.9 meters from the current deck and 10.7 meters from the current dwelling. The proposed water setback requires relief from the required 15 meters, but provides a greater setback than what is currently existing. Similarly, the new deck will also be left uncovered. With respect to the new garage, the structure is to be situated in the front yard, and the existing cabin will also remain in its place. It's important to know here that the number of accessory structures or uses is not being increased in the front yard. Regardless, accessory structures in the front yard is not uncommon within the local context. Additionally, although deficient in setback, the property is very well guarded from the road by a dense hedge of vegetation, as can be seen on the slide. As shown, the hedge limits the view of the property from the public space. Going to the next slide here, the zoning bylaw requires lots to comply with their applicable size requirements in order to permit the use of a cabin. As seen on the left image on the slide, the lot is existing and is similar in size to the various lots along Meechin Drive. Additionally, the cabin is an existing structure that is not proposed to go through under any change. Looking to the image on the right of the slide, this is an image of the neighboring property viewed from the rear yard of the subject property. As seen, the neighboring lot contains a newly constructed 2-story dwelling, and this has been added to show an example of new development within the local context and how the proposed application aligns with the character of development. After the writing of the report, Kawartha Conservation commented that they have no concern with the approval of the minor variance and that a permit must be obtained from them for the proposed project. The supervisor of Part 8 sewage systems also commented that they have no concerns with the proposed minor variance. In conclusion, based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application, subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions to the planner? Mr. Finn, go ahead.
I take it the existing garage is to be demolished,
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that's correct.
right? Was there any consideration given to locating the new garage where the existing garage is, so as to avoid the setback issues?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I did not discuss that with the applicant. The applicant proposed it in that location, and it wasn't discussed further. I believe regardless of where it would have been proposed, relief likely would have been required because there's a special provision in this zoning bylaw, which is a setback from the street center line, which isn't present in other zoning bylaws. So relief would have been required regardless, most likely.
But you don't know for sure that the relief would be required?
Relief for this, through you, Mr. Chair. I can't say for certain because I'm not sure how far they would locate it from the front lot line. But on top of that, because the garage is located in the front yard, so relief would have been required for that as well.
Yeah, it may be something, Mr. Finn, you might want to explore with the applicant if he's here just to see what they have to say. Anything further from committee? All right. Is the applicant here? Does the applicant? Oh, Mr. DeBoer again. Heard the comments or questions from Mr. Finn. Do you have any response to that?
I do. Again, it's Tom DeBoer with TD Consulting, representing the owner of this property. The garage, specifically to answer the question, has been relocated further to the left of the property, not in the same location of the existing. The primary purpose of that is to allow for the proper size of a sewage system for the proposed dwelling. Whether I placed it back in the original location or in the location proposed, the variance is still going to be required. In addition to that, if there's any other questions, be more than happy to answer them.
All right, and thank you for clarifying that, sir. Are there any further questions of Mr. DeBoer? All right, thank you again. All right. Is there anyone wishing to speak in support of this application? Support of this application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? Being none. Committee, where are we? Ms. Archer, seconded by Mr. Finn. Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. We're now dealing with file number D20-2024-035, and this is 190 Sturgeon Glen Road, Geographic Township of Fenelon. Ms. Evans, go ahead.
Thank you. The subject property is designated waterfront under the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan and is zoned rural residential type 3 zone under the Township of Fenelon zoning bylaw 12-95. The subject property is located on the eastern shore of Sturgeon Lake and is a waterfront lot. It currently contains a 2-story single detached dwelling and a detached garage that are currently under construction. Here we have before and after, the photo on the left being the original dwelling and the photo on the right being the dwelling currently under construction. The original dwelling was constructed in 1957. This may look a bit familiar as a minor variance was granted for this proposal on April 27th, 2023 for relief from the minimum lot frontage and a minimum water setback. Relief was granted to recognize the existing lot frontage of 9.45 meters and the proposed water setback of 12.31 meters. Looking to the official plan, low-density residential uses are permitted within the waterfront designation. Looking to the zoning bylaw, the proposal complies with all zone provisions and the reliefs granted through the 2023 minor variance, with the exception for the interior side yard setback. The purpose of the application is to recognize the deficient interior side yard setback, which was identified after construction had begun. Section 13.2.1.3b2 of the zoning bylaw requires a minimum interior side yard setback of 3 meters on one side and 2.3 meters on the other side. The proposed setback is 2.9 meters from the southeast corner of the dwelling. These photos were taken from the water yard looking towards the dwelling and show the corner of the dwelling, which requires relief from the minimum interior side yard setback, identified with the yellow star. The south setback from the southwest corner of the dwelling is 3.7 meters, so the dwelling exceeds the minimum 3 meter setback at that corner, and relief is only required for the southeast corner. The 0.1 meter encroachment is not anticipated to result in adverse impacts pertaining to massing, privacy, or lot drainage. Additionally, there is adequate space for access between the front and rear yard. No comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies, and no comments were received from members of the public. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Questions of the planner? Interesting. All right. Is the applicant here? Does the applicant wish to speak to the application? I don't think we've had it one of these days for a while. I best not jinx it, though. All right. Is there anyone? I'm just going to try it straight on rather than the online and hear things. So is there anyone wishing to speak in support of this application? In support of the application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? Being none, committee. Mr. Strangway.
As recommended by staff.
And I need a seconder. Mr. Finn. All right. Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? Being none, all those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. All right, moving right along, and we are. File number D20-2024-036, and this is Admiral Drive, Geographic Township of Fenland. Mr. Shahid, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject application seeks to develop a currently vacant land with a 1-story dwelling that includes a basement walkout, an in-ground swimming pool, a pool shed, and a boathouse. The property is situated along the shore of Sturgeon Lake with access from Admiral Drive. Relief is required as the neighboring property to the south is entirely zoned environmental protection, or specifically here in this case, the Environmental Protection Exception 5 zone, or the EP5 zone. The zoning bylaw requires a minimum 15-meter setback from any class of EP zoning. As seen in the image on the slide or in Appendix B of the report, the southern property contains water features stemming from Sturgeon Lake. Neither our official plan or data from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry recognizes any unevaluated or provincially significant wetlands on the subject or neighboring property. However, the water feature on the neighboring property is recognized under the official plan as a river buffer, which is designated environmental protection. It should be noted that the proposed structures themselves are further than 15 meters from the water features of the neighboring property. And if this EP setback were not required, the proposal complies with all other provisions and setbacks. The subject property itself is about 38 meters wide. Therefore, a minor variance would likely be required regardless of the location of development. The property, along with the majority of the shoreline lots within this area, are residentially zoned, meaning they were intended to be used as residential lots. All of the residentially zoned shoreline lots along Admiral Drive have been developed. If you refer to the image on the slide, you'll see the development of lots along Admiral Drive since 2004. The area consists of more recently constructed low-density residential built form, and the proposed structure aligns with this trend of development and established character of the neighborhood. With regards to comments, after the writing of the report, various comments were received. The supervisor of Part 8 Sewage Systems commented that there are no concerns as it relates to private on-site sewage disposal. Kawartha Conservation commented that they have no concerns with the approval of the application and that a permit will be required for the proposed project. In terms of comments received from the public, 3 comments were received from residents of the community. 2 of these comments received came in as letters earlier this week and were shared with committee members prior to this meeting. So going over the first letter received May 7th is from the property owner of both the neighboring lot to the south and the lot directly across the street to the west. So this property owner owns both of those lots. The property owner stated he is generally in favor of the relief required, and his concerns are primarily in regards to the rear yard or shoreline water setback. The owner states he would be in favor of this decision if the proposed structures were to be relocated further away from the shoreline in order to avoid alteration to the portion of land near the shoreline. The second letter received May 21st is from the neighboring property to the north, addressed 17 Admiral Drive. The property owner has outlined various concerns and comments, primarily regarding access to the property during construction, structures nearby the shoreline and susceptibility to flooding, and lastly, environmental and ecological concerns. Another comment that was sent in by email was received earlier this morning. This was from the property owners of 104 Daytonia Beach Road, who stated they have concerns regarding the removal of the 15-meter water setback. To start off, I just want to say I appreciate the public members for providing these comments and voicing their concerns. I should emphasize here that the proposed application complies with the required water setback of 20 meters. In fact, the regular water setback of the RR3 zone is 15 meters, but due to the exception zone, the minimum water setback is greater and measured at a specific elevation with the intention to protect build form from natural hazards and protect and enhance the ecological function of water bodies by creating a buffer between built form and water for the establishment and preservation of vegetation. The water setback is not a component of the subject minor variance application. In terms of concerns regarding impacts to drainage, sediment, and erosion control, the applicant has indicated under site plan that drainage shall be self-contained on site by the construction of swales or drain to a protected outlet to avoid drainage impact to any adjacent properties. Kawartha Conservation has identified that the property is subject to potential flooding hazards due to water level fluctuation on Sturgeon Lake. And they have stated that a permit will be required prior to any on-site work and may require additional supporting documents. This permitting process will be done alongside the building permit process and will cover flooding, site alteration, and grading requirements. In regards to access of the subject property during the construction process, this will be dealt with by our building division to ensure the appropriate measures are taken. All in all, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance as detailed in the report and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Questions of the planner? Ms. Richardson.
Just through you, for identification purposes, which is the lot 2? The people who have sent a letter of opposition, they're from lot 2. Which is lot 2, if you can show it on that 2013 map?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the committee member, just give me 1 second here to set up this laser pointer. Through you, Mr. Chair, so lot 2 would be just the property above, right there, so the property to the north.
Okay, thank you for that. So they were expressing concern about how the applicant would access their boathouse and in-ground pool. Is there an issue with that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the committee member. Yeah, so the property owner's concerns were for during the construction process. So because their property is located to the north of the property, they were concerned that the construction workers would be using their property to access the subject property for construction. But this would all be dealt during the actual building permit process to ensure that everything is contained within the subject property. And the applicant also had indicated this on their site plan, that all construction will be contained within the subject property. So access will not be made from lot 2 or 17 Admiral Drive.
Follow-up?
Well, the letter of concern indicated they had concerns about the big trucks, boats, and trailers and how they may not fit within the allotted variance, but you're satisfied that there is adequate property for that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, the proposal complies with all setbacks. The boathouse complies with all setbacks. It's the only setback that wasn't complied with was the setback from the environmental protection zone. That was the only setback, and lot coverage is complied with as well.
Anything further, Ms. Richardson? No, that's it. All right. Anything further? Yes, Mr. Erickson, go ahead.
Thing she was, through the chair, she was trying to get at is, how are they going to load and unload the boathouse from the water side only?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the committee member, I'm not sure what you mean by how are they going to unload the boathouse from the water side only?
How are they going to get the boat onto the property and off the property? From the lake only? Because there doesn't appear to be much room between the house and the property line. And the septic bed that's mentioned, that's on the site plan, are they going to have to go over that bed?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just give me a second to look at the actual site plan so I can follow along here. Through the chair to the committee member, thank you for that question. That is a good question. It could be that the property owner or the applicant might be loading it directly from the water, but this is likely a better question for the applicant to answer directly.
And I think keeping in mind to the committee as well, although I totally support all of our questions, but we are dealing with the setback. And let's try to make sure that our questions relate to the variance rather than other things that may be dealt with via the building permit or whatever. All right. Anything further from the committee? All right. Is the applicant here? Does the applicant wish to speak? Yes, ma'am. Yep. And your name, please? Would you pull that mic down just a little? Yeah, great. Thank you so much. All right.
Okay, I got it.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, so, you know, if we have a boat, we are intending to bring it from the water. And we also have other, like canoes or kayaks and those kinds of things would be stored in the boathouse area. And if the boat can't be brought in from the water, then we can store it off-site completely. So the question with regards to the boat is something that would not affect the construction of this property.
All right, thank you for that. Anything further you wish to?
Well, and, you know, we're looking forward to adding to, you know, the houses that are in the area.
All right, thank you. Are there questions of the applicant? Ms. Archer?
Through you, please, to the applicant. Where is the septic system on this property? I don't see it, and it's kind of small, and my eyes aren't very good, so.
The septic is going to be, can you bring that slide back, please? There, it's the proposed on the south line there. And the septic system contractor has done a borehole, and he's putting together the plan that, you know, fits the site.
Anything further, Ms. Archer? No? All right. Is there anything further from committee to the applicant? All right, thank you very much. We appreciate that. All right. Is there anyone here, I guess I better go to online for this one, wishing to speak in support of this application? In support of this application? Anyone here online wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Opposition to the application? Being none. Where are we? Mr. Erickson?
Approved as written.
All right. And do I have a seconder? Mr. Strangway? Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? All right. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. Your application is approved, ma'am. All right. We're now dealing with file number D20-2024-037, and this is 689 Janetville Road, Geographic Township of Members. Ms. Evans, go ahead.
Thank you. The subject property is designated Hamlet Settlement Area and Environmental Protection under the City of Kawartha Lake's official plan and is zoned Rural Residential Type 2 Zone and Open Space Zone under the Township of Manvers Zoning Bylaw 87-06. The subject property is located on the west side of Janetville Road in the hamlet of Janetville and contains a single detached dwelling constructed in 1870. The proposal is to recognize an addition that was constructed onto the back of the dwelling, as well as the deck, which was constructed onto the front of the dwelling. The addition is the kind of natural wood color on the photo on the left, and the deck can be seen on the photo on the right. Looking to the official plan, the dwelling with its new addition and attached deck are outside of the environmental protection designation, and a single detached dwelling is a permitted use within the hamlet settlement area designation. Looking to the zoning bylaw, the proposal complies with all provisions with the exception of the minimum front yard setback. Relief is needed from section 4.2C of the zoning bylaw, which requires a minimum front yard setback of 15 meters. These existing setbacks are 5.6 meters to the dwelling, 3.3 meters to the deck, and 2.5 meters to the stairs. As the dwelling was constructed in 1870, it predates the zoning bylaw, and the entire dwelling is within the 15-meter front yard setback. So no addition could be constructed onto the dwelling, and a new deck could not be instructed to comply with the setback. The dwelling with its reduced setback is existing and not proposed to change, and the addition is located on the back of the dwelling, so it does not increase the encroachment of the dwelling into the front yard setback. The deck is uncovered and open and is set back far enough so that it does not impact sight lines or the flow of traffic. There's also adequate space to allow for snow removal and other maintenance to occur along the road and sidewalk. Additionally, there appear to be other buildings along the street with reduced front yard setbacks, so the dwelling and deck are not out of character with the existing built form. Comments were received from the supervisor of Part 8 sewage systems, stating that the supervisor was not able to access the property, so a site inspection could not be completed. A third condition has been added to ensure the approval under the Ontario Building Code pertaining to private sanitary waste disposal is obtained, and a copy of those updated conditions have been printed and provided to committee. As a result of a comment from a member of the public, updated comments from the Building and Septic Division's plans examiner received stating that there is an outstanding building permit for the subject property. No other comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies. On Wednesday, May 22nd, comments were received from Judy and Peter Ibbotson, residents of 682 Janetville Road, expressing concern regarding building permits, the deck and addition potentially not meeting Ontario Building Code standards, a shipping container, and a privacy fence. On Wednesday, May 22nd, comments were received from Judy Ibbotson on behalf of Robert Wallace, resident of 691 Janetville Road, noting that the fence at the rear of the subject property encroaches onto the abutting property to the west, being 6 Spring Street. Follow-up comments were received this morning from Mr. Wallace expressing concern about an outstanding building permit related to the raising of the dwelling for foundation work that occurred approximately 14 years ago. Both sets of these comments have been printed and provided to committee. In response, I can say that the proposal or the purpose of this minor variance is to recognize the deficient front yard setbacks so that building permits can be issued for the deck and addition, and that part of that building permit process would be requiring that these structures comply with the Ontario Building Code. The matter of the shipping container is being handled by municipal law enforcement. The city does have a fence bylaw, which is administered by the Building and Septic Division. And I spoke to the plans examiner this morning, who confirmed that any concerns or issues with the fence would be handled by municipal law enforcement. Mr. Wallace provided a few photos of the fence this morning, and I have sent these to municipal law enforcement, and I asked them to reach out to Mr. Wallace. An officer did respond to me and let me know that they would be contacting Mr. Wallace regarding the fence. And regarding Mr. Wallace's comment regarding the outstanding building permit, I flagged this with the plans examiner this morning, and Mr. McKinnon confirmed that there is in fact an outstanding building permit, and in addition to the building permit process for the new addition and deck, building will also be able to organize an inspection for the outstanding building permit. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. And I would advise committee that, yes, there would appear to be a number of infractions, or seems to be the case with respect to the goings-on, but again, our focus here is the variance that's being asked for, and all of the other situations, as has been articulated by Ms. Evans, would be left with the building permits, bylaw, and that sort of thing. So I would ask that we keep our questions to the variance situation. All right. Are there any questions, committee? Being none, is the applicant here, or yes? Please come forward, ma'am. And your name?
Carol Dawson.
All right. Wish to speak to the application?
I have nothing to say.
All right. Do we have any questions, committee members? There may have been a question. All right. There are no questions. All right. Thank you. Then that would appear there aren't any. All right. Is there anyone here or online wishing to speak in support of this application? In support of this application? Anyone here or online wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Opposition to the application? Yes, sir. And your name is?
Robert Wallace.
All right, go ahead, sir.
I'm speaking on behalf of Peter Ibbotson, too, who's sitting with me. Our main concern is the way things have been done with this property is it's you know, our property is getting devaluated by the way that they're carrying on doing this property. And also I have pictures here to show you that the stuff that is around the property Instead of it being cleaned up and stuff and put in different places, you know, it's making it look derelict. I would like, it's nothing to do with this, but I'm not going to bring it up, but that's the reason I'm here to speak about. And the way they've went about stuff, I just don't want something else starting if they get this minor variance, and then after they apply for something else that we have no control over. Because right now we're dealing with what they've done. We're dealing with barking dogs. If I wanted to sell my property and those dogs were out, when somebody was there looking at the property, I'd never sell my place. So these are kind of the issues of why we're here today, and I thank you for your time. And if there's any questions or you want to look at these pictures for your own.
No, and thank you for taking the time, but I would advise, and I think you heard my previous comments, that our mandate with respect to the Committee of Adjustment has to deal with the merits of the case as it relates to the variance.
Right.
So I understand, I would suggest to you that you could, if you feel strongly enough about it, and you obviously do, you're here, that you follow up with bylaw and perhaps the planning department and building department with respect to issues that you may have.
Yeah.
All right. And don't leave, are there any questions of the deputy? All right. Well, again, sir, thank you for taking the time, and certainly the follow-ups I've suggested may assist you in some further way.
Okay, thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. All right, is there anyone else here or online wishing to speak in opposition? Yes, sir. Name, sir?
Sorry, my name is Peter Ibbotson. I live at 682 Jennerville. The thing that I don't understand is I built a new house on the opposite side of the creek, and the Kawartha Conservation Area got involved, and that just set everything. We had to go by their mandate. So my hands are tied on my property, this same creek. I can't do anything. My house is where it is because of the creek. I had the first raised septic tank in Manvers Township because of the creek. There were so many restrictions and cost factors because of the creek. I haven't heard the conservation area mentioned in anything yet.
Before you leave, sir, then I'm going to put that question to the planner. Were there any comments from Kawartha Conservation with you? I believe I heard you say something, but go.
Thank you. Yes, through the chair. Kawartha Conservation was circulated on the minor variance and provided comments that they have no concern. The applicant will be required to resolve this violation through their permitting process. So a permit is required from Kawartha Region Conservation Authority.
So they have been contacted, sir, and they will be exploring that, so.
Thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
All right, are there any questions of Mr. Ibbotson? All right, and thank you again, sir, and say the same thing to you as I did to the other speaker, that you do your follow-up with planning and building and bylaw if you wish. All right, thank you. All right. Is there anyone else here or online wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Opposition to this application? All right, to the lady that spoke to this, you've heard the comments. Do you wish to respond to any of the comments that were made?
To do with my minor variance, no.
That's fine. That's, thank you. Are there any questions of the applicant? No? All right, thank you. I think we covered most of that. Ms. Archer?
A question, please, through you to the planner. I don't appear to have any comments of any sort from KRCA. Do we not normally get something from them?
Through the chair, we did receive comments from KRCA after the writing of the report. The comments just express that they have no concern and that a permit will be required.
I think I heard you say something about a violation.
Through the chair, typically the course of action would be you go to KRCA and you get a KRCA permit before you get your building permit. So things were constructed without the building permit, which means they're constructed without the KRCA permit. So it's a violation for KRCA as well. So they will be doing that permitting process with them now.
Anything further? All right, Ms. Evans, just to put you on the spot then, which I don't mean to do, you've heard the comments from everyone with respect to the variance and with respect to other issues, but you are content that we meet the 4 tests here and that this is a go.
To the chair, yes.
Committee, where are we? Ms. Archer. Do I have a seconder? Ms. Richardson, with a question?
With the amended condition.
You're content with that, Ms. Archer? All right. Any further comments or questions with respect to the amended motion on the floor? Being none, all those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. All right, moving right along. We're now dealing with file number D20-2024-038, and this is 107 Pine Grove Road, Geographic Township of Bexley. Mr. Shahid, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Subject property is situated on the shore of Balsam Lake with access by a private right-of-way known as Pine Grove Road. The application seeks to facilitate the demolition of an existing dwelling and the construction of a new 1.5-story dwelling. Relief is required as the zoning bylaw requires lots to have direct frontage or access onto an improved public street that is maintained year-round. As part of the application, the existing barn structure, as shown on the image to the left on the slide, will be reverted back to a permitted agricultural use. To provide some context to that, a building permit was issued for the barn, but it was converted into a non-conforming residential use at some point in time. As a result, a condition has been added to ensure that the barn reverts back to its permitted issued agricultural use as part of the application. The intention of the access to a public road provision is to maintain structured urban fabric, foster accessibility, and to allow for effective emergency response. If you refer to the slide, this is an image I took of the roadway leading to the dwelling. I added this here just for reference to help understand status of the road. In this case, the residential use is existing and the lot has already been developed. The proposed application does not seek a new use. The private right-of-way runs through the subject property and is used by neighboring property owners for access. As a result of the shared access, it is important that development does not interfere with the private right-of-way, and the proposed development is located around 76 meters away from the private right-of-way, ensuring access is not interrupted. Moving on, after the writing of the report, Kawartha Conservation commented that they have no concern with approval of the minor variance and that a permit must be obtained from them for the proposed project. Development Engineering also commented that they have no objection to this application. To conclude, based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Questions of the planner? Mr. Strangway?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just wondering, since this is waterfront property on Balsam Lake, and you're referring to returning the barn to agricultural use, can you just clarify that? I'm not thinking this is an agricultural area, or is it larger than I'm seeing here?
Through the chair, so most of the shoreline lots are residential, but the area in a broader context does have agricultural lots. That barn was issued a permit back in 2016 for a permitted agricultural use. And like I said before, it was being used residentially, but they will plan, I mean, as part of the application, it will be reverted back to an agricultural use. Right now, it has plumbing features, systems, and accommodations within it. So to return it back to its agricultural use, the plumbing features will be removed.
Okay, I understand that, but I guess the best thing is I'll ask the owner if they're here. I'm just looking for a little clarification on the agricultural use. Thanks.
Any further questions of the planner? All right. Is the applicant here? Is it Mr. DeBoer? You're a busy fellow today, sir.
Good afternoon. It's Tom DeBoer, TD Consulting. I'm here to represent the applicant. This is a bit of a unique situation where we had a property with a house, then additional living accommodations were implemented in an agricultural permitted building. The intent of what we're going to call the agricultural building is going to be used for storage and for different amenities without any living or accommodations now that the new cottage is going to be permitted. It was almost as a family situation where it expanded beyond the limits of the cottage itself, and they used the secondary dwelling on the property, which was the agricultural building, and they retrofitted that for residential purposes. So as part of the application, we are proposing to remove all of the residential components within the agricultural building, bringing it back to more of a storage and an implement shed. As it relates to agricultural processes on the property, that's not intended at this point. It's just the definition being used for the building permit process.
Are there any further questions of Mr. DeBoer? All right. Thank you, sir. Anyone here online wishing to speak in support of this application? In support of this application? All right. Anyone here or online wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Opposition to the application? All right. Being none, committee. Mr. Strangway?
As recommended by staff.
All right. And do I have a seconder? Mr. Erickson? Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? Being none, all those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. All right. We're now dealing with file number D20-2024-040, and this is 165 Riverside Drive, former village of Bob Cajun. Mr. Shahid, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before we get into the application, I want to bring up that the notice circulated did not include the language for the need for relief for the maximum number of permitted cabins. This was only in the language of the notice, and the site plan circulated did include all the labeled structures. This has already been reflected in the report, which includes all required reliefs. And it is in staff opinion that the application can proceed, but I'll turn this over to you, Mr. Chair, to determine if the committee would like to proceed.
All right. First of all, are there any comments or questions to the planner with respect to what he just said? And if there aren't any, are we content to continue with the application process as it now stands? I'd like to see a show of hands.
Ask a question. Who prepared the notification that omitted that information?
Mr. Shahid?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that was the advertisement was prepared by myself.
So this was just a clerical error or whatever?
Yes, to you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this was just an error on my end.
All right. I guess what I'll do then, maybe I'll ask the supervisor, Mr. Conley, are you comfortable with the comments from Mr. Shahid, and before I ask the committee as to their position?
Through you, Chair, I am comfortable. These are errors that do happen from time to time, and again, not foreseen, not something that we want to do intentionally, but I think, again, by identifying that first and foremost, that allow the committee to be able to deliberate and see whether or not the committee is comfortable with that.
And you don't feel that this in any way will impede the process if we were to go ahead?
In my professional opinion, no.
Thank you. All right. I will ask again then, can I have a show of hands and I'd prefer a unanimous decision with respect to the, but that's up to you. So can I see a show of hands then as to your agreement to proceed with this? Another question?
I just think it's an important item that's been left off the circulation notification.
All right, but you have heard, I've asked Mr. Shahid and I've also asked Mr. Conley their position with respect to that, and even though they acknowledge that an error was made, they don't feel it's something that's going to impede the process. If there were an appeal of some sort, staff have to deal with that anyway, so that's where I sit. So I'm certainly in favor of proceeding as we go ahead. So am I going to have a unanimous or not? Can I see the show of hands again? All right. Thank you for that. Because if there's a problem or a glitch occurs as a result of what's gone on, and certainly your questions are excellent, right on, but staff are the ones that are going to have to deal with that, and we've certainly asked the right questions here as to whether or not they feel comfortable with proceeding. So I feel comfortable that we're good to go. All right. You made a note of that, Charlotte. Thank you. All right. Are there any? Oh, go ahead, Mr. Shahid. I guess we can.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. The subject property is located in the former village of Bobcaygeon with shoreline frontage onto Green Bay. Relief is required for the reconstruction of a boathouse and the recognition of an existing cabin. To provide some context, the property currently contains a one-story dwelling, a boathouse, 3 sheds, a picnic shelter, a detached garage, 3 existing cabins, and a temporary car canopy shelter. I'll go forward with the presentation, first speaking to the cabin, then the boathouse. So the cabin in question, as shown on the slide, was recently constructed and is part of an enforcement file. This cabin contains plumbing, which is not permitted under the zoning bylaw, as they are to be used solely for sleeping accommodation. After working with both the applicant and property owner, the decision was made by them to remove the existing plumbing from this cabin in order to comply with the definition of a cabin and proceed with the variance. The removal of all plumbing features will be ensured through condition number 2, as detailed in the report. To summarize the reliefs needed, the intention of the reliefs required for the cabin generally pertains to views from the street, cohesiveness with surrounding properties, and maintaining the primary residential use of a property. Due to the irregular lot configuration, as well as the property being a corner lot, the zoning bylaw considers the front lot line the shortest lot line abutting a street. As a result, the cabin from a technical perspective is located in the front yard. However, the property on site is set up appearing that the cabin is in the side yard. As seen on the images on the slide, the property is well guarded from both sides of the street and only a small portion of the dwelling is seen. The existing cabin nor any of the existing accessory structures are visible from the street. Lastly, although the number of permitted cabins are exceeded, the property owner has indicated that the cabins are utilized predominantly in the summer, with instances where they remain unoccupied overnight. Also, each of the cabins are about half the size of the maximum size of a permitted cabin within the zoning bylaw. As a result, the cabins are considered subordinate to the existing dwelling. Moving on to the boathouse, the property contains 2 zones, a residential zoning and an open space zone. The current boathouse was constructed in the 1940s along the shoreline, which is now the open space exception 1 zone, or the O1S1 zone. The O1S1 zone does not allow the construction of any structure other than a dock or flood control related structure. The existing boathouse and dock is in need of an upgrade for safety purposes, further explained in the report. Both the foundation for the dock and boathouse will be retained, and only the dock framing, decking above the water surface, and the physical boathouse are being replaced. The boathouse is being enlarged by a minimal 3.86 square meters. The enlargement is not going closer to the abutting southern neighboring property, but instead into the rear yard of the subject property. Or to simplify, the enlargement would be on the side facing the water or the face of the boathouse as shown on the image of the slide. The applicant has indicated that they have already received permits from Parks Canada for the boathouse being on the Trent-Severn waterway. The existing boathouse is 2.7 meters in height, and the proposed boathouse is 3.56 meters in height. Although a change in height, the structure still complies with the requirements of the zoning bylaw in terms of height. Lastly, the image on the slide shows a map displaying built form on some of the shoreline properties along Riverside Drive. As seen on the map, the majority of the shoreline lots contain boathouses and/or docks at their shoreline. Therefore, the existence of the boathouse is not uncommon, and the upgrade from the existing boathouse will improve the view from the shoreline. After the writing of the report, Kawartha Conservation commented that they have no concern with the approval of the minor variance and that the applicant has already obtained a permit for the proposed application. An unsigned letter was also received yesterday. However, the letter did not identify the writer, nor was there any contact information provided. As a result, the anonymous letter will not be discussed here today. In conclusion, based on the contents of the report, staff recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Questions of the planner? Mr. Strangway?
Thank you. Just clarifying, there are 3 cabins on the property. Do the other 2 cabins have plumbing, kitchen facilities?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, the other cabins are used solely just for sleeping. They don't have plumbing features.
So, my question is, in some cases on these waterfront properties and other properties, we're approving ARUs. And yet, in this case, we're not looking at anything like that as far as additional living space. I'm just wondering what the difference is. Why wouldn't they apply for one?
Through you, Mr. Chair, this was something I actually did discuss with the property owner applicant. In order to qualify as an ARU, they would also require a kitchen, which is not currently in the cabin. So it was not within their intention to convert it into an ARU. And even if it was converted into an ARU, they would need relief for other provisions, for example, size, and the location would still be non-compliant.
Appreciate that answer. Great, thanks.
Ms. Archer, did I see your hand? Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you to the planner. So this is another one of these villages that has no concerns about the number of buildings on the property?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, the Bob Cajun zoning bylaw just has the lot coverage amount, but not a maximum number of accessory structures.
Anything further of the, yeah, Ms. Richardson?
Through you, on page 3 under the variance maintains the general intent, you've noted that reliefs are also required from various provisions regarding the number of cabins, the locations of accessory structures, and accessory structure lot coverage, but I don't see that in any of the conditions. Could you comment on that, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just give me a second here to look at the report. Three, Mr. Chair, yes, so I see on page 3, reliefs are also required from the various provisions regarding the number of cabins, the location of accessory structures, and accessory structure lot coverage. So these are reliefs. The conditions that are added Number 1 and number 3 are the standard conditions that we usually have for our minor variances. And the second condition is the one that will ensure that plumbing is removed from the cabin.
I understand about the plumbing being removed, but you're indicating there may be other reliefs required? Like the number of cabins, et cetera, or is that really not a concern?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So that wouldn't be a condition. That's one of the reliefs that the permitted, that the number of cabins is exceeded, and that is the third relief that is included in this report. And that was the relief that was excluded from the advertisement that we spoke about earlier. So that wouldn't be a condition, that's a relief.
Follow up?
I'm just confused.
Yeah, I think I am as well. I'm just trying to differentiate. And Mr. Finn, did you have a question?
Well, just if the application is because of the coverage, was any consideration given to removing the cabin?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Firstly, going back to the other question. So the relief sought and the conditions are different. In regards to your question, committee member. So there was an extensive consultation with both the property owner and applicant. They were very adamant on trying to push forward for keeping that cabin. As a result, that's why they are removing the plumbing. And after working with them and the fact that they are in compliance with removing the plumbing in order to comply with the definition, it was in my opinion that the intention of the zoning bylaw was maintained for accessory structure lot coverage. And since the cabin is an existing structure, that's also a point to be made there as well.
Follow up, Mr. Finn?
Do we know the size of the cabin that we're concerned with, the one with the plumbing?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yep, the cabin with the plumbing is 14.88 square meters. So the other existing cabins are, there's the other two cabins, one of them is slightly smaller and the other one is slightly larger. So this one's just in the middle, is 14.88 square meters.
Follow up, Mr. Finn?
No follow-up to that. Thank you.
All right. Anything? Yes, Mr.
Through you, I'm just confused on why this statement was made that reliefs are required if it hasn't been addressed.
Actually, I was going to follow up on that with Mr. Shaheed, but go ahead. So I guess the confusion, Mr. Shaheed, is around the fact that we're saying the subject in page 1 there, and number 3, the subject property is zoned to allow for the accessory use of a cabin and currently has 3 existing. So we stop. And then we're talking about the condition to remove plumbing fixtures, but we've got, if I may, Ms. Richardson, if you don't mind, reliefs are also required from various provisions regarding the number of cabins. Now, the question is, we're not seeing any of that with respect to the other cabins, the location of accessory structures and accessory structure lot coverage. So none of that has been dealt with in the report. So where are we with that? Is that something we may see down the road, or it's not subject of a discussion here? I sort of touch on what you're, yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I just want to make sure that I'm on the right path here. So the question here is just towards the last sentence on page 3 of the report. Reliefs are also required from various provisions regarding the number of cabins. So yes, the only cabin in question here is this cabin that was recently constructed. All the other cabins are existing. I can walk through the various reliefs and how they relate to the conditions, if that would clarify it further.
Sorry, the accessory use of a cabin. However, it currently has 3 existing cabins, and we haven't dealt with via condition or whatever, anything to do with these other 2 cabins. So because they pre-existed, we don't have issues, or even though it looks like they're currently contradictory to the zoning bylaw, because there's 3 rather than just 1.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the third relief, that would allow for the second, that would allow for the total of 3 cabins. So the exceeding number of cabins is covered through the third relief.
So you're alluding to the fact that, so section 3 there under relief sought, that's covering the 3 cabins then? Is that what you're suggesting?
Through you, yes.
Are we clear on that, committee? Because I think the light just came on for me. Mr. Erickson.
I don't think it's well written. And going back to the original question of was the circulation complete and proper, I don't think so. So I would either defer or decline this application.
I'm going to ask Mr. Connolly to speak to that further, if you would, sir. Go ahead. He had a comment?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So when this application came in, the application is for the boathouse, and the cabin was an enforcement matter. All the other structures on the property were not included for this application and are not part of the enforcement matter. It's just the cabin in question that is part of the enforcement matter because of its because of the plumbing that is existing and the boathouse.
I think, notwithstanding that, Chair, I think the confusion for the committee, and I think it's something that the committee should be very comfortable with, is I think one of the earlier questions was there a maximum number of cabins permitted? And I think the answer back was no, it was based on coverage of the property. I think I got that correct. The relief and the condition that is here is expanded to include the idea of so the boathouse being one component, the other part being the cabin that has the plumbing to remove that. But I think the condition as it appears here also extends that relief to the 3 cabins versus, pardon me, just the subject of removal of the plumbing from the 1. If it's a confusion for the committee, it's a confusion for anyone who would be looking at this or may have some either support or opposition to that. So I would suggest that if the committee is confused, it's something we should, as staff, take a look at. And the point is well taken from the committee member that it's perhaps not as clear as it should be, and therefore something should be refined.
And thank you for that, because, yeah, it's there's a fair bit of confusion around it, myself included. Any from the committee? Mr. Richardson, did you have any further? Anything further from the committee? All right, well, let's do this. Is the applicant here? Are you? No. Is the applicant here or online? I'm told the applicant is online.
Yes.
Okay, and your name, sir?
Glenn Wilcox from Wilcox Architects. I'm the applicant, and the owner is here as well to answer any questions the committee may have.
Have you heard the comments, the questions that have been asked with respect to this? Do you have anything to say with respect to that?
Well, as the planner indicated, this originally started with the boathouse because the boathouse needed to be replaced on its existing foundation, and I think this came up as a secondary item, and actually came up through the building permit process after we had obtained all the other approvals from agencies required. Because of the zoning, we weren't allowed to do that work, and that's why the minor variance was established. But at the same time, this plumbing was added with this cabin, and it was felt by the planner that this should be dealt with in the same application so both projects could be resolved. I think it's been clear that the applicant, the owner is not interested in renting this out as a dwelling or anything like that. It is for their own personal use on the property. So there should be no impact from that. And the other aspect is that all of these existing structures are existing. I thought the planner had made that quite clear. The only thing we're altering here really is the size of the boathouse, which is a marginal increase. But we can't even reproduce the boathouse in its same shape and form because of the zoning. That's the reason for the minor variance. I think it's too bad that these comments are coming up about the writing of it, which, you know, the owner and myself really didn't have any involvement into that. We just asked for the relief, and we still think it's clear. I don't know what the issue is with that, but we would like the application to move forward if at all possible.
Well, the issue is that the zoning bylaw allows one accessory building, and we're advised that there are 3 accessory buildings. So that's where there's confusion with respect to the committee as to why we're only dealing with one, when in fact it would appear that there are 2 others that are in contravention of the zoning bylaw. So that's where the condition, I guess, if I may, Mr. Shahid, to yourself, did these other cabins pre-exist the zoning bylaw?
To you, Mr. Chair. So firstly, I just want to say that relief number 3 does cover the number of cabins. Second of all, the application is specifically confronting the cabin in question, which is the cabin with plumbing, as that was involved with an enforcement file. The other 2 cabins are not related to an enforcement file. And in terms of when they were constructed, the other cabins, I don't have that information. I did speak to the Building and Septic Division in regards to the permits issued for this property, and they had mentioned that there were various permits issued. Much of them were older, and because of that, they might have been destroyed when the city became amalgamated. But that's all I can say for that. In terms of that, I just really want to emphasize here that this minor variance application is specifically facilitating a building permit for this cabin that has the plumbing, which was related to the enforcement file, and is not speaking to the other accessory structures on the property other than the boathouse.
I guess what has thrown us, and the committee, is your page 3 of 10 in your sentence there with respect to reliefs. And it seems to me it's saying that regardless of what's gone on with the application at this point, reliefs are also required from various provisions regarding the number of cabins, the location of these cabins, and the accessory structure lot coverage. I think that's really what's thrown us, because it doesn't appear to have been dealt with other than the one cabin with the living accommodation. So am I anywhere near correct there? Like, yeah. Yes, Mr.
Just one point of clarification. When we consider the accessory structures and lot coverage, there are 4 accessory structures, are there not? Could you count? Don't you count the boathouse as well as the 3 cabins? Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can count the number of accessory structures, but the zoning bylaw doesn't have a maximum amount of permitted accessory structures. The zoning bylaw has a maximum amount of permitted cabins, not permitted accessory structures.
But looking at lot coverage, you look at all accessory structures.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, when I look at lot coverage, we include the gross floor area of all lot coverage, and that was calculated in order as a relief because of both the boathouse and the cabin.
Did you have a follow-up, Mr. Finn?
Or, Mr. Chair, I had nothing further.
All right. Is there anything further from committee members? Mr. Strang?
Mr. Chair, I'm really torn on this one because here within the House, I think we have some concerns, issues that perhaps aren't clear. And yet, from the applicant's point of view, I feel if we're to defer it, we're going to hold them up. And I think their application was very simple and straightforward. They wanted to redo the boathouse and they wanted to correct the situation with the cabin. So that's what I'm struggling with. I guess we have two routes here. One, we could go ahead and approve this with a lot of hesitation. The other route is we could defer it for 1 month and get some clarification on this. And that's where I'm sitting. I'm not comfortable with the report. I am comfortable with the application. So I don't know how the rest of the group feels about that.
All right.
Chair, would a deferral of this to the end of this meeting so that we can do the other application, and then would better wording assist in the conditions?
Well, I'd rather deal with it now that we're here, and it's. I'm not in disagreement with Mr. Strangway. Obviously, the applicant, they feel comfortable with what they've asked for, and I'm caught betwixt and between. So I'm not so sure that I totally support a deferral. But again, there's a lot of confusion. Yes, Mr. Conley, I was going to go back to you anyway. So go ahead.
Again, I think point well taken through you, Chair, to the member of the committee. I think the application is not being properly reflected in terms of the report, and I take responsibility for that in terms of anything that's a lack of communication. Perhaps if I might suggest if we could take a 5-minute break, and what that would allow us to, as a committee, be able to work on some wording, some amending wording in the condition that would cover off the whole situation, that would make sure that we're staying true to the application and would cover off any hesitations or concerns that the committee may have with respect to the number of cabins and the difference between what the zoning bylaw has, the number of cabins, and also the relief being sought. So if I could put that on the table as a suggestion.
I think that's an excellent idea. So let's take 5, and we'll let you folks talk about where you're going to go. All right.
Thank you, Chair.
And just to get some matters cleared, I want to officially recognize the fact that the pause in proceedings was requested by staff for clarification purposes with respect to the application, just so we've got that clear. Okay, Sharon? All right. And Mr. Connolly, I'm going to go to you first, seeing as how you had asked for the pause.
Thank you, Chair. So what I'll do, just give a brief introduction, is in going through the report, you can certainly see where there is a bit of question in terms of clarity and also some of the questions that were asked. So I'll have the planner, Mr. Shahid, to sort of give an explanation, and then I'll come back and then sort of summarize, and hopefully that will provide the clarity for the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll just break this down. So looking at that last sentence on page number 3, reliefs are also required. So that should have said reliefs are required from XYZ, these provisions. The statement before that in regards to plumbing, relief is not required for the plumbing. Plumbing, that existing structure has been constructed with plumbing. The condition has been added to remove the plumbing for that structure in order to be considered a cabin. Once plumbing is removed, that structure can be considered a cabin, and then relief number 3 addresses that as it speaks to the number of cabins. In regards to the location, to clarify that cabin that currently has plumbing is located in the front yard, and that is the only cabin that is subject to this minor variance application. So relief is required for that cabin as it is located in the front yard. The other 2 cabins are not part of this minor variance application. Let's say that regardless, those cabins are compliant in terms of their location as they are located in the side yard. So I hope that clarifies things in terms of the wording there.
And thank you for that, Mr. Connolly.
Thank you, Chair. So again, there sometimes when you can read this over and over, it makes a lot of sense when you've read it or written it. So again, I take responsibility for the lack of clarity if that was there. So again, the intention here is that through an enforcement matter, the plumbing was identified, that's being pulled out. That's something that we need to make sure that makes it compliant with the zoning bylaw. As such, it becomes a cabin. It's the nature of this application, as the applicant and the agent for the applicant has identified, is for the existing boathouse plus the relief sought for the cabin that is now going to be created by pulling the plumbing out in the front yard. Notwithstanding that, the wording in condition number 3 is to cover the fact that it is the third unit becomes a cabin, and therefore there's a recognition of all 3 cabins on the property. So the intent is that would make it all in conformity with the zoning bylaw.
In fact, I think Mr. Shahid brought the light on for me when he mentioned that perhaps it would have read better, relief is required rather than putting the also in there. I think the also sort of threw us a bit. So.
Absolutely. English is a powerful language when it's not used properly sometimes, and I accept that.
Mr. Erickson, go ahead.
Chair, the names given to one is cabin, and the other 2 are called bunkies. So is there a difference in the bylaw between a bunkie and a cabin?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Shahid, you want to respond to that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the committee member. No, so in the zoning bylaw, there's no mention of a bunkie. It's just a cabin. On the site plan, the applicant had labeled bunkie, and then cabin because they wanted to differentiate that those 2 are only slept in, and that cabin has plumbing. So that's why they put it out. They labeled it as plumbing. But the 2 structures that are labeled as bunkies, they are considered cabins, and they are cabins. They're used for sleeping accommodation.
Just one more. So you're not going to call the existing cabin without fixtures a bunkie? You're going to now call them all cabins? Or should they be all called bunkies?
Mr. Shahid?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So it's just that the way that the site plan was labeled, but once the plumbing is removed, all of them are considered cabins. Bunkie is just like sort of an interchangeable word, but they would all, once plumbing is removed, they would all be cabins.
Anything further from committee? I would say this, that after, and I appreciate Mr. Shaheed coming up and explaining that to me. So after hearing the comments from Mr. Shaheed and from Mr. Conley, I'm comfortable with proceeding where we are. So I've forgotten now where we were. I think were there any further comments? Geez, but one of those days, one of those applications. Yeah. Yeah, controlled chaos. Yes, Ms. Archer, go ahead.
Just for clarification, please. So this applicant, through you, sorry, to the planner, the applicant came to us, she wanted to repair or rebuild her boathouse. That was her concern. That's all she came for. And then we found these 3 outstanding things and we're trying to put them all together. Is that it?
Mr. Shaheed?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the application was originally for the boathouse, and that cabin was added, or that structure was added, and it is an enforcement file. In terms of how the enforcement file came about, I can't speak to that. I don't know exactly how it came about, but it was added after, it was added due to this enforcement file.
Was that a question I perhaps should put to you, Mr. McKinnon?
You may get in on the act, Mr. McKinnon.
Through you, your chair. The enforcement file is just to remove that plumbing in order to create the cabin, as Mr. Shaheed had said. It's only addressing the one cabin.
So how did you get notified that there was plumbing in there?
Through you, your chair, our enforcement files are private and confidential.
Yeah. No, as I mentioned before, earlier in the meeting, I don't know if it had to do with this application or another one, that anything to do with enforcement issues are dealt with through the building process or through bylaw or whatever, and really don't impact one way or the other on our decisions with respect to the variances. So, right.
It wasn't the applicant that came, like all she wanted was to fix her boathouse. Thank you.
That's my understanding. Yeah, Mr.
Further to what Ms. Archer's saying, I think we're getting down into the weeds in this one and need to remember that's what the application was for. And I'm like yourself, Mr. Chairman, I'm comfortable and ready to proceed with this one.
Thank you for that. Ms. Richardson.
And I would like to thank staff for taking the time to talk amongst yourselves about this and clarify the issue in my mind.
Actually, you stole my thunder, because Mr. Shaheed and Mr. Conley, I appreciate the fact that you did take the time and helped us out there. So, because I would say to everyone here and to the applicant that we're here to make not just decisions, but informed decisions. And you would be somewhat annoyed with us if we were just making decisions based on the bare facts. We like to get, I think to use Mr. Strangway's term, down into the weeds. But believe me, we're making informed decisions here, hopefully for the benefit of everyone concerned, especially the applicants who come before us. So I just wanted to be very, very clear on that. All right. Are there any further questions of the planner? All right. Did you wish to say anything further, sir, with respect to the application? Can you hear me?
No. Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
You go ahead, sir.
Yes, thank you for the clarification. I don't think we have anything to add at this point.
Any questions of the applicant? All right, being none. Is there anyone here or online wishing to speak in support of this application? In support of this application? Anyone here or online wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Opposition to the application? All right, after all has been said and done, Mr. Strangway.
as recommended by staff.
All right, do I have a seconder? Ms. Richardson. All right, any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? All right, all those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. And again, thank you. We appreciate your help. Your application is approved, sir. I was going to say moving right along, but I'm not sure that would fit. All right. We're now dealing with D20-2024-041, 959 Meadowview Road, Geographic Township of Emily. Ms. Evans, go ahead.
Thank you. The subject property is designated prime agricultural under the City of Kawartha Lake's official plan and is zoned Community Facility Zone under the Township of Emily zoning bylaw 1996-30. The subject property is located at the northwest corner of the intersection of Meadowview Road and Orange Corners Road. The surrounding area is comprised of residential and agricultural uses. The subject property contains the Fowler's Corners and District Lions Club. The building was constructed in 1956, and the Lions Club has been in this location since 1998. The purpose of this application is to demolish the existing front porch and construct a new covered front porch with a ramp. Looking to the zoning bylaw, the proposal complies with all provisions with the exception of the minimum front and exterior side yard setbacks. Relief is needed from section 6.2.1.3a of the zoning bylaw, which requires a minimum front yard setback of 10 meters. The proposed setback is 7.8 meters. Relief is also needed from section 6.2.1.3c of the zoning bylaw, which requires a minimum exterior side yard setback of 10 meters. The proposed setback is 9.5 meters. Here we have some photos of the existing building. Looking to the official plan, agricultural, agricultural-related, and residential uses are permitted within the prime agricultural designation. As per section 34.1, nothing in the official plan or the zoning bylaw prevent the use of any land, building, or structure for a purpose prohibited by the official plan if the land, building, or structure was lawfully used for that purpose on the date the official plan was adopted. The property is zoned to permit community facility uses, and the use has existed since at least 1998. These photos show the existing setbacks for the porch and stairs, which are to be improved upon as the new porch and stairs are to have an increased setback from the front lot line. The proposed setbacks from the front and exterior side lot lines provide adequate spatial separation between the road and built form, and it is not anticipated that the new porch will adversely impact traffic flow, road maintenance, or sight lines. Comments were received from Councillor Tracy Richardson expressing support for the application and proposal. No comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies, and no comments were received from members of the public. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of the planner? Being none, is the applicant here? Yes, sir. Do you wish to speak to it? And your name, sir?
Yes, I'm just here representing the Fowler's Corners Lions Club. My name is Bob Van Domsler, and I have no comments today other than I'm here to answer questions if so done. Thank you.
Well, all I would say to you is I'm sorry that you did draw the short straw today, so. Yeah. Are there any questions of the applicant? There may be a question, sir, if you'd come back up there. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Strangway.
Yeah, it's not a question, just a comment that I'm glad to see that the accessibility ramps going in. That's terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Anything further from committee? All right. Is there anyone online wishing to speak in support of this application, in support of the application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? Being none, committee. Ms. Archer, as printed. Mr. Finn, second. Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? All those in favor? Your application is approved, sir. All right. Right, moving right along, there's no consents or anything under other business from staff? All right, committee? Nothing. All right.
Just wanted to thank the whole staff and Catherine as well for dealing so well with that, not Bethany, where were we? Janetville. Because there was a lot of problems there and you seem to have dealt with them all, so thank you.
Yeah, I go on and on about staff, and they probably start saying, he sounds like a broken record, but I totally agree. Like, we have excellent staff, and you've done an excellent job over the years, all of you. So we may not say it as much as we should, but we appreciate your help, and you're one of the reasons that these applications move along like they do. So thank you so much. Much appreciated. Well, if there's nothing else, I guess the next meeting is on Thursday, June 27th at 1 p.m. in council chambers. And I need an adjournment. Ms. Richardson, Mr. Strangway, all those in favor? It carried.